That was fun. I wouldn't mind doing that again. 2 empty war horses. Except the next time I'll make sure my ears are on. What'd you say? Huh? Yes, I forgot to put my ears on, but that's okay. I learned a lesson there. Hey, we all do that occasionally. Yes, these are 2 vintage firearms from World War II. And this is kind of a P38 versus a 1911. And I guess they were versus each other back in WW2, weren't they? The 1911 and the P38 to quite an extent. However, these 2 specific firearms would not have been too close to each other, I don't believe, because we do know that this 1911, this Colt, was in the Pacific Theater and brought back by a minesweeper. I've told you that story in that video. He tried to, this old fellow tried to scratch out the U.S. property because he thought he'd get into trouble. And so that, well, he was in the Pacific Theater, and this is most assuredly, in Europe. Okay, made by Walther. You've seen this one already. So, kind of a little bit versus. Thought you might be interested while we have this one before it goes back to buds. We might just give you a look and a couple of thoughts on the differences between these 2 pistols that were pretty widespread as the war went on, especially the Walther, the P38, which really didn't go into production until I think about 1940, and it was meant to replace the Luger, which was more fragile. That was the plan, and so quite a few. I think I read that over 1 million of them were made. There were a lot of them out there in circulation, so pretty common, and we know these were common, right? So, which was better? Tough question, isn't it? Which was better? And there's no easy answer to that sort of thing, but we thought we'd do a little comparison. We've already broken them down in other videos, and I'll put links to the other videos on these particular firearms in the description, so we won't go into that, but they're not a lot different. They are different in terms of how they operate and break down. If you recall, this one is the P38. This really was kind of ahead of its time, and it's similar to the Beretta, the 92, in the way it operates and breaks down and everything. And man, it goes back to the 1938, 1940. It's pretty interesting. And we know the 1911. We've seen them broken down a lot of different times. The interesting firearm. I think probably this one might be a little easier to break down, put back together, probably do it a little more quickly. Okay, once you get the hang of it, I would say 1911 is not a big problem, but it's a little awkward at times, but not a big problem. GIs learned to do that blindfolded, so they weren't too big of a deal. How do they stack up? Well, one, the big difference is, of course, we have 45 versus 9mm, right? So there's a difference there. And the cartridge they shot, the Americans, we carried the 45 ACP from, first decade of the 1900s up until 1986 when we went to the Beretta M9. Europe's a little different. They've always been big on the 9mm, the 380s, the smaller cartridges, just like with the on the larger firearms, the MP40 versus the Thompson submachine gun. You've got 9 and 45, the same difference there. So difference in philosophy. Where they were carrying full metal jacket, which is the rule in war, the 45 probably more effective, right? Now, with today's cartridges and carry ammo and everything, there's just not nearly the difference performance-wise. But when it's full metal jacket, 9mm does have its detractors, and it's justified in a lot of ways. If you don't have any expansion at all, it is nice to have a bigger bullet, and that's the one reason that the military has looked at moving away from the M9 and the 9mm, for military purposes, because they're forced to use full metal jacket. So that's part of the reason. So anyway, caliber is a big difference there, of course, and weight's a little different. The old slab sides is 44 ounces. I weighed these 2 specific guns. Well, the gun is not 44 ounces. I weighed them loaded with loaded magazines, and that's how, of course, the soldiers would have carried them. Full magazine, but nothing in the chamber. So this one was 44 ounces loaded, and this one was 37 ounces, basically, you know, right in that rounded up just a little bit or down, but, you know, 37 versus 44. So the old 45 is a little bit heavier. Part of that's the ammo, right? And speaking of old slab sides, this is, for a 45, they're really not that thick. I measured them with my new calipers and everything, and that's one area where the 45 wins out in terms of thickness. The P38 was almost 3/10 of an inch thicker. 3/10 of an inch. This is like 90, I don't know, I got it like 9200s or something like that. And this was about 2/10 over an inch. So about 3/10 difference. So you got a thicker firearm. Now, we talk a lot about that with carry firearms and firearms these days, but you know, in war with an external holster and some of the big old ungainly holsters they had anyway, not a big deal. The weight was probably more of an issue than this firearm being just a little bit thicker. So not a big deal. If I were carrying it in an inside the waistband holster, it would be a big deal, but not so much then. And function-wise and every way, these both are reliable firearms. The P38 has a good reputation for reliability, and I've had a couple here at the compound that both have been reliable. This thing, we've shot it a fair amount, and it's, there's not been a hitch. It's worked with every magazine, and I've got a bunch of magazines I picked up. They all seem to work, no hang-ups. So it has a reputation for being reliable, and it lives up to it. So pretty cool gun. Wouldn't mind owning one, as I've said. Other comparisons, I guess one thing you could mention is that when this came about, in terms of their use in World War II, and this gun wasn't in production until, I think almost 1940. This baby had been in use, what, 3 decades? Almost 3 decades before this one came about. So this one had the history of being a reliable firearm for a long time before that one even entered the scene, in World War II. So that was pretty cool. This thing, gosh, World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. There really aren't many handguns that have that kind of history associated with them, and it's cool to have one. Of course, this is 1943. That was in World War II. And it's the A1, of course. I mean, most of those made during World War II, well, they were A1s. Okay, a little bit different from the original 1911. I use that term interchangeably. 1911, this is the 1911. I know that the real 1911, that was the model up until around, what, 24 or something, whenever the A1 came out. But they're still 1911s, all right? And then, of course, this firearm had different variations afterwards. Now, they really couldn't make it once the war was over. I think it was out of production for a while, and then they got grants to make them again, a little bit different format, different materials, and that kind of thing. But both are reliable, and both have an interesting history. I would say the 1911 has a little more interesting history. Let's shoot them a little bit. Let's see. As shootability, they both seem to be nice guns and fun to shoot. Okay, I've had more experience with the 1911, so I might be biased, you reckon? So let's just pull the trigger here a couple of times. Yeah. I don't like the mag release on it. Now there's a negative. Let's see if we can hit a 2-liter with it. Has a pretty nice trigger. Dark on this sight. Pretty good. Sweet gun, nice trigger, a pleasure to shoot. It really is. I don't know if anybody said that around World War II, if it was a pleasure to shoot, but it is a good shooting firearm, and it's a smooth functioning firearm, no doubt about it, no doubt. Biggest negative to a lot of people, in your view probably, in this comparison, is the fact it's a 9mm. And yep, that's just what it is. Let's shoot a couple of 45s, get that out of our system. Yeah, we have an empty magazine in there. I've got a variety of mags I grabbed here. Oh, I think if we're going to smoke pot, it ought to be with a 1911, don't you? Definitely. Yeah, boy. Hits a little harder. Sweet to shoot. Feels good. Gets just a little bit of a trigger bite, maybe, but not much. Hammer bite. Let's shoot. I've got to shoot another one of those mags. That just feels so good. Let's see if it'll shoot one-handed. That's really the way GIs were taught to shoot it, I believe, when it first came out. Okay. Click, all right. Yeah, one-handed generally because they had the reins of their horse in the other hand, right? Hanging onto that horse. So it goes back that far, you know, the early days. So pretty cool. So I don't know which one you would choose. If you were looking for a firearm today, to a range gun, maybe even a home defense firearm, you know, either one would work, wouldn't it? Even one this old. That's what's cool about technology of the 20th century, 21st century. These firearms still do today what they were designed to do. Now, neither one might feed the most extreme hollow points out there, you know, because they weren't designed around hollow point ammunition. But either one is reliable and pretty easy to shoot well with a little bit of practice, no doubt about it. A lot of history of that old 1911. That thing, it was going long before this one, as I said, and then long after. And it's still going strong, whether you like a 1911 or not. And these things are around. There was manufacture of these, gosh, I don't know, what, 80s and 90s, I think, and different company and different materials. But and they're very collectible and they're very desirable. A lot of people buy them, collect them in all variations, not just the old World War II models. Just a pleasurable gun to shoot. Fairly heavy, and you're shooting a 9mm cartridge, so very easy to shoot. So anyway, a couple of really historic firearms that I just can't get enough of. It's really cool to be able to have them here on the shooting table together and to be able to shoot them and experience them. It really is special. Every time I pull this thing out, I have that feeling. And you know, my dad carried a 1911, you know, in World War II, and as most people did if they carried a handgun. And it's just you know, neat guns. These old guns like this are a really interesting part of the hobby of firearms, and no doubt about it. And, you know, we spend a lot of time with other firearms that are modern, you know, and polymer and whatever. And they might even be better in a lot of ways, maybe even more reliable. But there's just nothing like these things. The P38, pretty cool. Just wanted to bring it out and show you one more time, and then put it beside this old 1911 Warhorse. Both of them have been there and have seen the elephant. And again, they can't tell us about it, but it's cool that we can still bring them out and actually experience them and enjoy them and take care of them. It's our responsibility to take care of them and make them last as long as they will. So anyway, in a battle of the P38 versus the 1911, I'm not sure who wins. For me, I'll take the 1911, I think. But both good guns. Life is good.
Hi, I'm Zeke with the Sonoran Desert Institute, and here at SDI, we're extremely proud to be sponsors of the Hickok 45 channel. You may be asking yourself, well, what is SDI? SDI is an affordable, fully accredited distance learning education program. We have an emphasis in gunsmithing and firearms technology. If you decide to become a gunsmith, you'll need to learn proper gunsmithing techniques, and while some people will use an apprenticeship program to gain these techniques, a formal education will ensure an organized, more comprehensive learning environment. But when you choose a gunsmithing school, it's still kind of difficult. So it's very important that you choose a gunsmithing school that meet the following criteria. First, look for a nationally or regionally accredited program. And whether distance learning online or through a brick and mortar ground program, a gunsmithing program should always have a hands-on element. And finally, make sure you look for a school with high student satisfaction. Find reviews online, check out its Facebook or other social media, or get on the same social media sites, find some alumni, and ask to speak with them about their experience. And while we're not at SDI today, I do have some of the firearms I've learned to work on and build myself through the SDI program. So let's go take a look at them. Okay, maybe not. We'll just get seriously. Can I not get a chair that fits me? I'm a big guy, dude. So I guess back to what we were originally talking about. Above all else, find the school that's right for you. It's not always going to be the distance education programs or the brick and mortar ground schools that are for everybody. Just make sure you do your research on multiple options before you make that decision. But if you want more information on our gunsmithing school, just go to www.sdi.edu or call us at 1-800-336-8939.